Hello there, and welcome to episode 12 of the Dudes Being Guys Sports Podcast.
Just guys being dudes.
Joining me on today's episode is Spencer Allgood.
What's up, guys?
I'm Marko and on today's episode, we'll be discussing the Jimmy Butler trade, Le'Veon Bell not reporting, Durant and Green's altercation, Monday Night Football being moved to Los Angeles, and much more.
Before we begin, I'd just like to remind everyone to please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below.
All right, let's get right into things with Jimmy Butler being traded to the Philadelphia 76ers for Dario Saric and Robert Covington, also Jared Bayless and a second-round pick. So, your overall thoughts, did the Wolves get equal value for Jimmy Butler?
I mean, yeah. It's a tough trade. I mean, Jimmy Butler is obviously a good player, but when you don't want to play for a team, it's hard to stay there. It's hard for the team to want him to stay there. So, I mean, it was pretty much inevitable. He's been begging to be traded for a while now, but on the value of the trade, Saric, good player off the bench for the Wolves now. Robert Covington can shoot the three. I mean, Bayless can shoot the three if he has to, and the pick has come handy down the road. So I think for giving up a player that's all-star caliber is pretty much as good as they could have asked for.
Well, I think the only problem, which is always a problem when you're trading a star, we saw this with Kyrie. You're never going to get equal value when you're the one trading the dollar and you're getting back nickels and dimes and quarters. It never, ever equals to a dollar. If you look back at the Kyrie trade, Jay Crowder, Isaiah Thomas, the pick, it never amalgamated to what Kyrie Irving was. And I think the same thing's going to happen with Jimmy Butler. But I do think it's going to hurt Philadelphia in the short term because they're not going to have the depth come these playoffs unless they have one open roster spot, and I think Kyle Korver's going to end up there, but I still don't think it's going to be a deep enough team to make a successful playoff run.
I mean, if you look at the squad now, they have 4, maybe 5 guys, and when it comes to playoff basketball, you need more than that to win.
Right. If you look at Boston, I think there's probably, if you match up Boston and Philadelphia or Toronto and Philadelphia player by player, I don't know outside of Joel Embiid if the 76ers even have a guy that's better. I guess maybe Jimmy Butler and Jason Tatum you could argue with, but no argument between Leonard and Butler. But overall, just the Raptors and the Celtics still seem better. I think the 76ers have distanced themselves from the Bucks and the Pacers and the rest of the East, but I still think they're not as far behind as they were with the Celtics and Raptors, but they're still behind them. But so if you had to say who won this trade in your opinion?
Honestly, to me, it's the Timberwolves. I mean, when it comes down to it, if a guy's sitting half the games because he doesn't want to play, that's not someone you want on your team if you want to make a playoff run. You haven't heard Karl-Anthony Towns' name or Andrew Wiggins' name all season because when Jimmy Butler's playing, he's getting you points. And so I feel like him leaving is going to free up those guys to be more effective. And you also have Derrick Rose, who's actually been a factor this year for the first time in a while. And then Jeff Teague, he's a good player. Now you got someone who can shoot the three in Covington, who they don't really have before that. I think, honestly, for this year, the Timberwolves are looking like the more solid squad.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think in the short term, a lot of people will see that the 76ers won the trade because they'll make it further in the playoffs. But overall, I think you're definitely going to see more improvement out of Philadelphia. I know Robert Covington and Dario Saric aren't going to produce as much as Jimmy Butler did, but as you said, if a guy's unhappy and he's not playing as much, they're going to get more out of those two hardworking defensive guys than they would from Jimmy Butler just because he didn't want to be there. So overall, where do you think these teams will be standing in 5 years after this trade? I think Philadelphia will probably still be playing second fiddle to Boston in the East, but I do think this is going to help Minnesota take a step into possibly the higher echelon of the Western Conference here in a couple of years.
It really all comes down to if Jimmy Butler signs when his contract's up because, I mean, knowing he didn't necessarily want to be at the Timberwolves, we don't know yet if he wanted to be at the Sixers. So it really comes down to if he signs and shows that he wants to be part of that organization and build up a team that could be a possible contender, then yeah, it will be the Sixers, but it all comes down to if he's willing to sign.
Yeah, and that's really the big problem now because he's shown he's been unhappy in two places. In Chicago, forced his way out. In Minnesota, forced his way out. And really, if he's not happy here in Philadelphia, I think he's going to gain a bit of a reputation, not for being a head case, but just being one of those guys that is never happy, and that franchises might be afraid to sign long term just because they don't know if they can get the full commitment out of him for 4 or 5 years, whatever they sign him for. All right, let's move on to Le'Veon Bell, who did not report to the Steelers in time for the deadline, so he will not play in 2018. So, do you think the Steelers will be fine without Le'Veon Bell this season?
Overall, yes. I mean, James Conner's putting up some pretty insane numbers. Antonio Brown's been going on a great run. Ben Roethlisberger's finally looking like a real quarterback again. Their offensive line's doing really well. For as of now, they look like a playoff lock for this season alone.
Yeah, they're definitely a playoff lock, and the success that James Conner's had has really had probably a negative effect on Bell's free agency. Not his status, but I guess how his value is what I should say. Because it's starting to look more and more like it's more the offensive line and the receivers, which take guys out of the box, and Big Ben being able to audible out of stuff. It's just everything around Bell is perfect for a successful running back, which is what we're seeing in Connor. So I don't think I think some team is still going to offer Bell a ridiculous amount of money, but I think this just shows that there's not as much value in running backs in the NFL as we think there is.
Yeah, I mean, he's asking for an insane dollar amount for his skills. And if you look at him before, he was considered the best, maybe one of the best running backs in the league. And now some guy who was a nobody before the season started is putting up some of the top numbers in the NFL. And it really takes his status down a notch. And it's going to make the hired teams that would be contenders less likely to pay him that amount of money.
Right. I don't think, while looking around at all the playoff teams this year and even from last year, I don't think there's a single team that's going to go after Le'Veon Bell. I think he's going to have to end up on a worse team with more salary cap, and I think he's just going to have to settle. He's going to either have to pick less money and a better team or more money and a worse team. But overall, I think his sitting shouldn't have a huge effect on the size of the contract because I think people will understand. I mean, you saw what happened with Earl Thomas. Broke his leg in a contract year, and not only could this mean less of a contract in both years and money for Earl Thomas, this could be the end of Earl Thomas's career. So I totally respect Le'Veon Bell's decision to protect his career because football players, their career is finite, especially running backs. And he's already getting up there in age. He's 27. I know that's not very old, but for a running back, he only has a few more years left of his prime. So I totally respect his decision to do that. So, do you think him doing this will encourage players to do it more in the future?
I think that the extent to which he did stay away from the organization won't be replicated in the near future just because he didn't get what he wanted. But I do think the fact that, it really all depends on what his next contract is. Because if he doesn't get a big contract and he's missing out on the $14 million from just this season, players are going to say, I missed out on $14 million, and then he never even got the contract that he wanted afterwards. So it really comes down to, are players willing to take that risk? And honestly, I'd say no. I think it would be discouraging because the Steelers never approached him and he didn't come back. So he's missing out on $14 million and he's not playing, and his stock is going to go down in the end.
Yeah, and I don't think we'll ever see a player of Le'Veon Bell's stature or status, I guess, ever attempt this again. But I do think maybe some players with less power might attempt to do this and might fail, because I think the only thing that's keeping Le'Veon Bell supporters in this is the fact that he is that good. And, if you do put him on any team, he will be good. And the problem will teams pay him? And that's really the only problem. So let's move on to the Warriors. They had a locker room and on-court altercation, verbal on the court, and possibly some physical stuff between Kevin Durant and Draymond Green. Draymond Green was suspended for 1 game. He'll be back on the court in their next game. But I don't think this is as big as the 1 game. I think this is bigger than the 1 game suspension. I think this is really showing the tearing at the seams of this organization and this team as these title runs have been wearing them down. So do you think this altercation will have any effect on the Warriors' ability to three-peat?
Not this year. I mean, who else in the West can contend with them. The Lakers aren't there yet. I still don't believe in the Rockets. I don't think James Harden can carry a team. And then out of the East, if the Celtics don't make it out of the East, then no, the Celtics are really the only team I think that could have a chance of beating them in a 7-game series. I think that this could take it from being a sweep in the finals and a sweep like dusting their way through the playoffs to making the series way more intense than they should be. But in the end, I think the outcome is going to be the same as everyone was expecting.
I do agree with you. I think, but the big part of this is I think what it has for the future past this season, both Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant entering free agency and Draymond Green next year. I think Draymond Green and Klay are committed to this organization. And I think with some of the stuff you saw Draymond yell, or I guess people have lip read what Draymond Green yelled, and people are questioning Kevin Durant's commitment to the organization. Do you think Kevin Durant is going to be in Golden State next season as a Warrior?
No, not at all.
I mean, I don't know where he goes, but his best chance, I think what is frustrating to Kevin Durant is he left Oklahoma City to win titles because he thought that this would bring him some bravado or something to his legacy, but it had the exact opposite effect. He was, just treated so poorly by people, and some of it was justified, some of it not, but he just there was such a negative reaction to his free agency decision. I don't know if he'll ever want to leave a place again, especially if it's for a place like Los Angeles where he could be seen as title chasing again. So your thoughts on that? Where do you think Kevin Durant lands next season then?
I could see him going to LA. I mean, he's shown that he doesn't care what the public perception of him is. Like going to Golden State, he knew that he was going to become the most hated player in the NBA. And he does have a really good off-court relationship with LeBron. I could see that being a factor that would pull him there. Other than that, there's really no destination, I think, that is really drawing the eye right now. I mean, it's Kevin Durant. Wherever he goes, he's going to be a huge factor. And I've heard that the New York Knicks fans all think he's going there. I don't think that's going to be a possibility. That organization is just in pieces right now. But it really comes down to where he feels most comfortable.
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere. If not, he's going to at least just sign another 1-year contract because if anything, this as I think it was Draymond said this. It's a long season. They'll iron things out. And you know what really makes people forget about a lot of the problems? Titles. Michael Jordan was not the nicest person, He did not treat teammates the best, but he was a great player and he brought titles. So I think that is what people really I don't think Kevin Durant will really care about a lot of this as soon as he wins another title. I don't think it'll be a big problem. And honestly, in this free agency, do you think Klay Thompson is going to leave? I don't think he'll leave.
I don't think he will either. They've already pretty much determined that Boogie Cousins won't be there because of contract and cap space and all that. And if Kevin Durant leaves, that's going to free up even more cap space for Klay Thompson to get a deal he deserves because he's been the guy who's been taking less money to stay. And especially this season, putting up 14 threes in 27 minutes, he's proven that he deserves way more money than he's getting. And he seems like he's getting to the point of his career where he's got the titles. He needs to start thinking about his future, and I think he's going to start looking for money. But with the cap space clearing up, which will most likely happen next year, I think the Warriors will be able to offer him enough money to entice him into staying.
Well, all right. With that, let's move on to the Chiefs and Rams Monday Night Football game being moved from Mexico City from Azteca Stadium to the Los Angeles Coliseum in Los Angeles, California. So your thoughts, will this maybe affect the NBA's attempts to have games in Mexico in the future? I know they have the London games under a good contract at Wembley until I think 2021, but will this affect Mexico City games in the future?
It all depends on how big the fan base is in Mexico. Because they're only doing this for money, and if they're getting the money, then they're gonna do it regardless. This one was only the case because the field was so beat up that players were saying they wouldn't play if they had to go down there.
Yeah, that could have been a major catastrophe. You could have seen a lot of players, if they would have played this game, and if the NFL wouldn't have had such a swift reaction to the social media images of the field and the reports, I think we could have seen a really bad game because this is probably one of the most important games for sure. This is the most important game of the season for sure. And I saw a stat. This is only the fifth time since the merger in 1970 that two teams, both with 5+ wins and one or less losses, have ever met. So 5 times in 50+ years. So I mean, this is a huge game, and the NFL wants this played on a nice field in good weather in low altitude where this can be as high scoring as possible. The line for this game is, or the over under, I'm sorry, is 64. That's the highest over under in the NFL since 1985.
It will be a Big 12 football game. There will be zero defense. There might be a sack or two,
So
but
you're
other
taking
than
the
that,
over, right?
oh, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
I think the over under should be like 75. I do not see this game being less than 75 points. I mean, I know the Rams have the names, but their defense really hasn't been that good this year,
And
especially
they don't have
their pass defense.
and they don't have Aqib Talib in the secondary, which he's a veteran, he's a leader, and without him out there, I think it's really shown that it's having an impact on the secondary's ability.
Marcus
to cover.
Peters, I think I saw a stat. He's given up, I think, 12 touchdowns this year, which is the most among all defensive backs except for like Malcolm Butler for the Titans. And of course, the Chiefs' defense is just like they're dead last or 31st in every defensive category except for like third down defense or something, which that's because they rarely get teams to third down. So, this is going to be a shootout, and it's going to be fun. But kind of going back to the Mexico City thing, and this is kind of a debate a lot of people have had for years with London, but do you think we'll ever see a team in an international market like Mexico City or London or anywhere in Canada?
Personally, I don't think that'll ever happen because knowing people that are soccer fans, which is the majority of the Mexican sports world and like the European sports world, they find football boring. And I think that if there's an NFL game there once, twice a year, they're going to be like, this is super cool. I want to go see that. But in the long run, would they be willing to go 16 times a year to watch a game that they find slow? I don't think that would end up happening.
I think, yeah, you have a point to where it's like a fun event, but will they support it long term? Not only will they go to the game, but let's say the team is just awful, which expansion teams are historically awful. Will they be able to support a team for a game they don't necessarily care for a lot and that is bad? That's a bad mixture. But I don't see a team ever being in London. Just the travel is too ridiculous. I mean, I know with jet planes, you can get anywhere in a short amount of time, but just the time change is pretty rough. I do think eventually we could technically see a team in Canada, but I don't know if there's necessarily, due to the Canadian Football League, I don't know if the NFL wants to intrude upon that market. And I don't really see a team in Mexico City. Your thoughts on maybe a Mexico City team?
I don't see it happening. I don't think there's enough of a fan base out there for it. I mean, I was honestly pretty surprised that they were going down there for a single game at all when I found out about it, and the fact that they were so quick to pull the game also shows that like they're not super dedicated to the idea of it. If they needed it to happen, they probably would have found some other arrangement to get the game down there, I feel like. But
yeah, totally. And I think actually they probably could have had the game. If not in Azteca Stadium, they could have found some other arena in Mexico City. Or I guess maybe if they wanted a bigger arena, they could have found, there's plenty of giant arenas in Mexico due to the soccer league. So they could have found an alternative solution. What I think this really boiled down to is Monday Night Football in the NFL wanted this game in the Los Angeles Coliseum in the U.S. in low altitude, on a good field where this could be a high-scoring affair. It's pretty cut and dry, and you can really see the NFL's motivation, and I don't blame them. All right, so let's move on to lightning round news. So first up, the New Orleans Saints signed 6-time Pro Bowl wide receiver Brandon Marshall as a replacement for Dez Bryant, who tore his Achilles tendon on his second day of practice with the Saints. The college football playoff rankings for Week 12 came out on Tuesday, and for the first time ever, the entire top 10 remained unchanged. Meanwhile, Northwestern clinched the Big Ten West with a 14-10 win against the Hawkeyes in Iowa City. This will be the first ever trip to the Big Ten championship game for the Wildcats. Lastly, the MLS Western and Eastern Conference Finals are set, with Sporting Kansas City playing the Portland Timbers in the West and Atlanta United playing the New York Red Bulls in the East. Anything in particular you want to dissect from there that was really important to you?
For me, it's hard to feel bad about Des Bryant getting hurt. He's not necessarily the most lovable character. I feel for him in his career because he's a good player and he deserved to be on a team before blowing out his Achilles. But in the end, I think karma got him for some of the things he said. And in the end, the Saints will be fine.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because they signed him to a 1-year deal early enough where they were actually thinking about signing him long-term past this year. And not only will that take away that contract opportunity, there might be people saying that this could be career ending just on a physical level, not that, teams wouldn't sign him again because clearly the Saints signed him, but that just his body might not recover at his age with that devastating of an injury. That's, pretty rough. But also looking at, Northwestern clinching the Big Ten West for the first time ever, and that, a lot of people are looking at that and saying, well, Michigan and Ohio State, whoever wins that wins the East, and that's really not a high quality win to help them get into the playoffs, either of those teams. But Michigan only beat Northwestern by 3, and Northwestern's ranked now. I don't think anyone wants to play Northwestern right now. Your thoughts on that?
The way Michigan's playing on defense right now, I think Northwestern's in over their head if that ends up being the game. Ohio State, overall this season, has not been impressive to me. Michigan, on the other hand, I feel like they're looking like the best squad in the Big Ten.
I'm telling you, if it's Michigan, and it probably is Michigan coming out of the game, I think they'll crush Northwestern. If by some miracle it's Ohio State, I think Northwestern has a fighting chance, and we could see potentially a 4 or 5 loss team in the Rose Bowl, which is probably the first time that would ever have happened. All right, let's move on to the dude of the week, which this week is Taylor Cornelius, the Oklahoma State quarterback, who in a 1-point loss, 48-47 to Oklahoma. He was 34 for 51, 501 yards passing with 3 touchdowns. They lost on a last-second two-point conversion attempt. They went for the win. They played a really great game. I thought they maybe should have played for overtime, but just a really great game by Cornelius.
He looked like a quarterback that we should know, not someone that we just heard of because of this game. And it's if you look at it, it's the second straight week that a team has gashed Oklahoma's defense, and really that's the one thing holding them back. He came out and he played like a NFL prospect, which is the second straight week.
Might become, actually.
Yeah, it's the second straight week that's happened, and he looked like a stud out there.
Well, I think they replaced Oklahoma did. They replaced their defensive coordinator, Mike Stoops, with Ruffin McNeil, and for the first 2 weeks, they looked pretty good off. They held TCU and K-State, especially in the second halves of those games. They really played a full game, but we saw this regression, and I know Texas Tech and Oklahoma State have pretty high-powered offenses, but this defensive effort from Oklahoma, there's no excuse. And honestly, these last 2 efforts, just giving up absurd stats and points to both these teams, is probably enough to keep them out of the playoff if they even have a shot against the 2 games they'll play against West Virginia. So great job by Taylor Cornelius getting the dude of the week. Let's move on to our final segment of the day, which is the Heisman Watch. So, Spencer, who do you have at 3 in your Heisman Watch?
3, probably Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the numbers, they've been putting up some massive point totals. What was it, 2 weeks ago against Louisville? They put up 77.
Yeah, I mean, they've put up some really impressive numbers. I think just a lot of people have him off their radar just because he didn't play for the first 4 games of the season, which I think in turn makes it really difficult for a lot of people to award him a Heisman Trophy if he's only going to play 75% of the season. But I totally see him being up there, and he could be a nominee. At 3, I have the senior quarterback from West Virginia, Will Grier. He's 11th in passing yards, 8th in completion percentage, 5th in touchdowns. He has a great receiving core. And West Virginia, with a solid defense, it's 25th in the country. If they beat Oklahoma twice, watch out. I mean, if there's some chaos above them, they have a chance at making the playoffs with 1 loss. And their 1 loss is to Iowa State, who's 16th now. That's a really good loss, and it was a tight one. So I have Will Grier at 3. Who do you have at 2?
2. My number 2 is actually who I think is the most exciting player to watch. It's Kyler Murray. Little dude, can throw the ball a mile, can run past everyone, and he's also got drafted in the top 10 for the MLB. Like, total stud.
Yeah. He's He's really good. I have him at 2 as well. He's the most fun player to watch. I thought he was just going to be like Baker Mayfield light, when he got the starting quarterback job for Oklahoma, but honestly, he is better. The Oklahoma offense is better with Kyler Murray than Baker Mayfield, which is insane. And Baker Mayfield won the Heisman Trophy. So what do we do and put Kyler Murray at 2? Well, both of our number ones, I'm assuming. Tua Tagovailoa from Alabama. He's only passed the ball once in the fourth quarter this season. Just what's gonna win him this award? He's not very high up on a lot of the totals lists in yards and touchdowns. What's really helping him is he is setting historic marks for the efficiency that he has on the field.
He has played one of the most flawless seasons of football that I've ever witnessed. Like, he goes out there, he is only a sophomore, and he plays like he's been playing at the top level for decades. Like, he's just always calm, always composed, and he's always going through his progressions, and he just looks completely in control out there.
I think it was one play against LSU. He made it to his fourth progression, and I don't know if I've ever seen a college quarterback under the duress he was under make it to his fourth progression on purpose. He is so good at, as you said, maintaining calm and just directing the offense like a seasoned vet. And his touchdown to interception ratio, it's this good. Check it out. He has the same touchdown to interception ratio that Tom Brady had when he won the MVP this last time. I mean, that's how good his numbers are. He has a 14-1 touchdown to interception ratio. It's insane. And he has I think 500 less passing yards than Kyler Murray, but he's taken somewhere in the area of, I think, about 150 less snaps. And of course, Oklahoma, they're in, obviously more competitive games late, so Kyler Murray's had to play less, which really isn't, that's not on him, but it just shows Tua Tagovailoa is doing so much. He's just so impressive with his efficiency that I don't think we'll ever see a quarterback ever throw for a higher passing percentage. I think he's at 76 or 77% right now, which is right about where Drew Brees is, and he's going to set an NFL record with that and for sure win an MVP. So if Tua Tagovailoa is doing that in college, this kid is something special. So, all right, that is it for episode 12 of the Dudes Being Guys Sports Podcast. My name was Marko Yurkovich. Joining me this episode was Spencer Allgood. We will see you guys next week. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. See you guys next week.